What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into in the world of volleyball, such as Arizona State sweeping Stanford at home. Impressive stuff from the Sun Devils as it's another top 5 win for those scrappy Sun Devils. And how about West Carolina handing the Citadel their first loss of the season? Did Nebraska escape without any losses? Or are there no more undefeated NCAA women's volleyball teams? Also, how about UC Irvine? The Anteaters getting their first big win of the season, taking down UC Santa Barbara at the Crawford Hall. I'll be talking about that in a little bit. And how about Kansas State beating BYU not once, but twice? Those Wildcats are not to be slept on. Also, I'll be discussing some CIF Southern Section Division I girls volleyball and Long Beach State's men's volleyball schedule. So hand me a volleyball, set the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday evening, Monday afternoon, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 218 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on, formerly known as Twitter, X, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. We also have a Facebook page. All you just have to do is type in the word IE Sports, then radio, and then boom, just like us, and then that's how you'll be able to get updates on IE Sports Radio, which is us. Also, we have ourselves a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go there, you will see all kinds of eventful links that you can click on, such as links to our podcast and our pages dedicated to our podcasts, such as this one. We also have our latest sports news, our Hall of Fame, our blog site, and we have our merchandise shop. In addition, we also have all things happening in the community forum as well. For the past 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. Big shout to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on. All you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order, and then you'll have that delicious Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky in your fingertips. Follow Planet Jerky on Instagram for all of your social medias posts at Planet Jerky. And once again, a huge shout to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. And the way you can follow Set Point on social media is via X, formerly known as Twitter, at set_point.ie, and then Instagram at set_point.iesr. And you could also follow me, Teran Rodriguez, on X as well, at Teran Rodriguez1, though I post a lot of things on that account. But either way, that's how you're able to find me, the host. And with all that said and done, let's begin. So there was a lot of NCAA women's volleyball matches to go over, at least the notable ones. So for me, we have to start off on Thursday. As Thursday, we had ourselves a nationally televised match. We had number 5 Texas taking on number 20 Baylor. And early on, it looked like Baylor was going to make history as they took the first 2 sets against Texas, 25-21 and 29-27. It was just impressive that Baylor had such a strong start. And here's the thing. Texas is not well known for losing a whole lot of conference matches at home. Their last home conference loss was in 2014 when they lost to Oklahoma. And believe it or not, it was on October 27th, 2014. This match was actually played on October 26, 2023. So it was almost the anniversary of that last conference loss. So it looked like Baylor had Texas nearly down for the count, but notice I said the word nearly. Texas eventually woke up. They turned on the gas. I normally say turn on the jets, but they turned on the gas quite a bit as they were on fire in the 3rd and 4th set. And eventually they forced a 5th set, and despite trailing for a little bit, Texas eventually took that 5th set 15-10. They took sets 3 and 4 by identical scores of 25-11. Texas was led by the two-headed monster that is Maddie Skinner and Jenna Wenas, who had 22 and 20 kills respectively. Ella Swindle had 8 kills to go along with her 42 assists and her 12 digs, so she was flirting with a triple-double right there. And Asia O'Neal, she had 8 blocks to go along with 7 kills, as she had no hitting errors. She hit .412 on the night. Texas progressively got better in terms of their hitting. From set 3 and beyond, they hit over .320, which is darn right impressive. For Baylor, they were led by Elise McGee, who had 17 kills. Riley Simpson had 16 kills. And Ali Sizek, if I pronounced that wrong, I do apologize. Sizek, she had 12 kills. And then I guess Manuela Bibine, she had 9 kills. My takeaway for Texas is this. I knew they were going to win, but honestly, I had no doubt they would eventually come back because Texas is not known for getting beaten at home in terms of conference losses, and they're too good of a team to lose to Baylor. This isn't 2019 when Baylor just was taking names and kicking butt. For Baylor, my takeaway is this. They're not as good of a team as they were in the past, and that's a harsh reality to look at, but Texas is still big sister, and I know Baylor wanted to beat Texas before Texas moved on to the SEC next year, but it wasn't going to be happening. Maddie Skinner and Jenna Wenas were on a whole other level. And heck, even Ella Swindle, only a freshman, she was doing great things for Texas as well. As Texas also won the rematch between these two teams the day after, as Texas wound up sweeping Baylor 27-25, 25-19, and 25-15. By the way, this match was played on FS1, which it was a nationally televised match, and I got to see Texas reverse sweeping their way after they dropped that second set. I mean, I caught the tail end of that second set, but honestly, I had this strange inkling that Texas was going to find its way back into the match. Before I continue, guys, give a shout to the live chat room, or the live chat room on Spreaker. Mikey Two Guns, he says, "Hey, bud." And Mike Pat says, "Gotta love the triple-double." All right, moving on from Texas Baylor and staying within the Big 12, we have number 8 BYU at Kansas State. Now, here's my thing for Kansas State. They've already had 2 big wins against 2 Big 12 opponents, being Baylor and Iowa State. Both were ranked. But in this matchup, I didn't think that Kansas State would pull out the win. Personally, I knew they would compete, but I had a feeling that BYU would maybe have a shot at most likely winning. But Kansas State not only beat BYU, they swept them 25-18, 25-16, and 25-19, holding BYU to only a 75 hitting percentage while hitting 382 of their own. They also outblocked them 9-6 and outdug them 44-36, as Kansas State was led by Aaliyah Carter, who had 18 kills. She hit 317. Anaya Clinton, she had 13 kills, no hitting errors, and she hit 684, which is darn right impressive. In terms of the dig department, I'm really gonna butcher this one. Izzy Silzewski. She had 11 digs to go along with 27 assists. And then Carter had 10 digs. For BYU, they were led by Aaron Livingston, who had 12 kills, while Kate Pryor added 8 kills. My takeaway for this matchup is this for Kansas State. They are very much under the radar, and they are a pretty darn good team, as I'll be discussing them and BYU in round 2. But for BYU, my takeaway for them is this. You're a very good home team, I get it, but you have to learn to win on the road. And if you're not able to beat Kansas State, which is unranked, even though they have a few good wins here and there against Baylor and Iowa State, you're not going to go deep in the NCAA tournament. I understand winning on the road is tough, and going from Provo all the way to Kansas State is very tough, or the Morgan Family Arena is tough. Or just to be more specific in terms of location, Manhattan. Not Manhattan Beach, Manhattan. And not Manhattan in New York, Manhattan in Kansas. But for BYU, you got to learn to win on the road. If you don't, then you're not going to be able to survive against the big dogs, such as like Nebraska or Wisconsin or Pitt if you get a rematch with them. So all in all, for BYU, they have to learn to win on the road. And then the last matchup to go over in terms of Thursday's matchups is LMU versus San Diego, a little West Coast Conference showdown. Now, this is the battle of second place, as one of these teams was going to see pretty much their first place hopes take a major hit, as Pepperdine was still occupying first place. As LMU wound up winning the match, this was played at the Jenny Craig Pavilion in San Diego. San Diego won the first set 25-23, but LMU, or Loyola Marymount, wound up winning the next three, 25-15, 25-16, and 25-22. My takeaway for LMU is this. This was a big win for them just because they hadn't swept San Diego in the season series since 2003. So in other words, it's been 20 years since they last swept the season series against the Toreros. My takeaway for San Diego is this. They're just not a good team. They're just nowhere near the team as they were last year. Last year, San Diego had a lot of success advancing to the Final Four for the first time in program history. Sadly, they just don't have that same success, as LMU was led by Kari Geisberger, who had 13 kills, Madeline Bostra, she added 10 kills, Jacqueline Moore, she added 8 kills. LMU hit 267 as they also outdug their opponent 63-59, and they and San Diego were even in blocks 6-6 as a team. What really stood out was LMU winning the serve battle. They had 10 service aces to San Diego's 4 service aces. But LMU is a tough serving team, as Isabel Bareford, she had 3 aces, and Michelle Schaefer, she added 2 aces to go along with 11 digs. For San Diego, they are led by Nemo Beach, who had 16 kills, while Amber Stivrins added 11 kills. So, like I said, they just don't have the big dogs like they did in the past, primarily last year. And one thing to also note is that they started Isadora Turcariol. If I mispronounce any of these names, I do apologize to the players and to the fan base. I'm sorry if my pronunciation sucks, but Isabella Turcariol, she started in favor of Ani Evans, which I kind of have to wonder. She must be out, because that's not like Jen Petrie to sit her. It's either that or she's massively struggling, and I hope it's not the latter of the two. But I also hope she's not injured as well. So hopefully Ani Evans is still healthy and whatnot. Moving on to Friday's matches. All right, so I already discussed Texas Baylor, and I guess I might as well just discuss the rematch between Kansas State and BYU before I get on into the main matches. So Kansas State, BYU round 2. So this matchup was a little bit closer, but Kansas State wound up beating BYU again, and not only did they beat them, they swept them. Though the sets were close. 25-21, 25-22, and 25-21 were the set scores, but still, it's a sweep. I was literally having to double-check that, saying, is this deja vu? But it wasn't, as Kansas State wound up winning again. Aaliyah Carter had another monster game with 17 kills, though the errors were pretty high. But thankfully she had Anaya Clinton, who had 16 kills. She did have an error, but it was just one, as she hit 455 for the match, as Kansas State hit 266 as a team. And they outblocked BYU 8-6, though I don't think the blocks were high, just because you see the number of points that both teams scored. But the big thing that did stand out was the digs, as Kansas State outdug BYU 53-43. For BYU, they were led by Aaron Livingston, who had 12 kills. Doesn't look like Claire Little got into the action, and this kind of makes me wonder if she's struggling or she's hurt. Claire Little, I think, makes a big impact for Kansas State. So for BYU. So if I'm BYU, I'm hoping she gets back or she finds her swagger again, just because Claire Little does make a big difference. See what I did there? But I'll give BYU this. They were better in this matchup, but this just goes to show you have to win on the road. And winning on the road is so much more important, just because I don't think BYU will be... they'll be a part of the top 16, and they will host a regional matchup, but they're not going to be hosting up until the Elite Eight, they're not going to be hosting up until the Elite Eight. So for BYU, I just think that they're not as good of a road team as they are at home, and that's concerning if you ask me. Jumping over to the Pac-12, we had number 9 Oregon taking down number 6 Washington State in Pullman in 4 sets, as Washington State took the first set 25-19, but then Oregon took the second set 25-14, then they took the third set 25-19. Second set they were dominant in, as Oregon just never trailed and there were no ties. Now the fourth set was very interesting. It looked like Washington State was going to force a fifth. They were up 23-20, but then Oregon rattled off the next 5 points to take the fourth set. It was kind of payback for what happened with Oregon and Washington State the first time around. As Washington State, it looked like they were going to have to go 5 with Oregon in Eugene, but instead, Washington State wound up beating the Ducks in 4. And now Oregon returns the favor, as Gabby Gonzalez led the way with 13 kills. Mimi Collier added 11 kills along with Cara McGee. Georgia Murphy led the defense for Oregon with 18 digs, while Hannah Pukas had 13 kills to go along with 43 assists. Oregon hit 273 while holding Washington State to 128, as the Cougars were led by Pia Timmer, who had 12 kills. Iman Isanovich added 10 kills. Julia Norval, she added 14 digs, and Timmer added 11 digs. My takeaway for Washington State is this. I know Oregon's a good team, but you have to defend home court. Now, this is kind of a little controversial to what I said previously about BYU. You have to learn to win on the road, but you also have to learn to take care of business on your home court. And this is kind of the second loss out of 3 games where Washington State has struggled. Now, they could have some key injuries, but it looked like from the box score, they had pretty much everyone healthy for the most part, unless I'm missing something, as Washington State, remember, they lost to USC last week on the road via a reverse sweep, and they beat UCLA in 4. So to lose to Oregon, it's not an ultimate letdown, but it kind of dampens their spirit just because they had Pac-12 aspirations, and they were chosen to finish second in the Pac-12. But with this loss, it kind of hurts them, and maybe a possibility of them keeping up with the Joneses, a.k.a. Stanford. Heading down to Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, we had Georgia Tech, number 11 Georgia Tech, taking on Boston College. So the Eagles took the first set 25-20, but then Georgia Tech took the next 2 sets 25-19 and 25-18. And then Boston College, being the resilient bunch they are, they took that 4th set 25-18, and then Georgia Tech eventually took that 5th set 15-9, as it was a little tight early on, but the Yellow Jackets were eventually able to fly away with the win, as Tamara Oteen led the way for Georgia Tech with 24 kills. Bianca Bertolino, she added 19 kills to go along with a .341 hitting percentage and 14 digs. Oteen also had 10 digs, and Larissa Mendez, she added 12 kills, as Georgia Tech hit 284 for the match, and they even hit 516 in that second set. Boston College was led by Katrina Jensen, who had 13 kills. Haley Schroeder had 11 kills, while Elena Crabtree and Jenna Pollock, they both had 10 kills each. Georgia Tech outdug Boston College 61-58, while Boston College got 21 digs from Anna Murphy, which was pretty impressive. Tech did win the serving battle 7-3 in terms of aces, but Boston College did win the blocking battle. Well, actually, no, they both tied for the same number of blocks, as they both had 9 blocks apiece as a team. So my takeaway for Boston College is this. They hit 242 as well. But Boston College, I really want to believe in this team. I really think Boston College is good, but my problem is this. I think they're just in a conference where everyone is better, and I'm starting to get the feeling why they were chosen to finish really lower than 10th in the ACC. And it sucks because I really had high hopes for Boston College because they returned so much talent. But it's looking like they're either going to be in the NIVC again, or they're just not going to be in the postseason. And it sucks because I like this Boston College team, and they are a respectable bunch. For Georgia Tech, my thing is this. They can't keep going 5 sets with everybody. Eventually, those 5-set matches are going to nip them in the butt, and when it does, it's going to eventually cost them either cost them in conference, or it's going to cost them their season come postseason time. But for Georgia Tech, a win is a win, even though it was ugly. Thankfully, they have Otine and Bertolino aiding the cause to help them get that win. It really helps that they have that new number 1 option to help out Bertolino, considering they lost Julia Bergman to graduation. So good win for Georgia Tech, as I was impressed with them, impressed that they were able to win on the road, because it's never easy to win on the road. I forgot to add this comment from Mike Pat regarding Kansas State. He said, Kansas State is such a fascinating sports program. They seem to pop up as at least competitive in most sports. And yeah, that's totally agreeable. I think they get slept on quite a bit, and then when they pull off the big win, then people start to take note. Patty Bax also just joined the chat room. She said, just joined, have a great show, Teran. Thank you, Patty. Heading down south to the SEC and to Athens, Georgia, we had number 24 Auburn taking on Georgia. Now, I said that this was going to be a sneaky good matchup, and it certainly was, as Georgia took the first 2 sets, 25-22 and 25-18, as it looked like Auburn was going to lose, and if they were to lose to Georgia, they would get knocked out of the top 25. Thankfully for Auburn, they did take a very tight third set, which featured 16 ties and 8 lead changes, winning 25-23. Then in set 4, Auburn had little to no problem in that set. They never trailed, there were no ties, and they won set 4, 25-18. Then in set 5, Auburn never trailed, though there were 3 ties, but Auburn took that 5th set 15-11, completing the reverse sweep on the road against Georgia, as Madison Shear led the way with 24 kills, and she hit 302. Akasha Anderson, she had 11 kills, but she hit 194, but it's all good. Auburn hit 243 and was outdug 66-53. They were also outblocked, but they did outblock their opponents 14-8, which is quite good, even though they lost the service battle 11 aces and 9 service errors to 9 aces and 14 service errors. Georgia was led by Sophie Fisher, who had 16 kills, while Casey Evans, she added 13 kills, and then Erica Staunton, she had 12 kills. My takeaway for Georgia is this. This is another one of those frustrating losses where Georgia had a chance to make a statement, but unfortunately fell short in 5 sets. They also went 5 with Kentucky earlier in SEC play, but sadly they just could not pull it out. And it sucks because I think Georgia is a sneaky good team. You remember last year they took down Towson, which only had 1 loss. and in the NCAA tournament. And honestly, I think Georgia can still pull off at least one upset. And I always say that Georgia is well known for pulling off an upset in the SEC and shaking up the standings. Unfortunately, it just did not happen in this game, and they're just now. It's just now another one of those losses where it could have been a what if. What if they took that third set? Then they would be the talk of the town, or at least the talk of the SEC, saying, hey, we beat Auburn and knocked them out of the top 25. But that is not the case. Heading down to California and Orange County, we have number 25 UC Santa Barbara taking on UC Irvine. Now, contrary to popular belief, and don't look at the box score because it's lying to you. This match was not played at the Bren Event Center. This match was played at Crawford Hall, which is basically the practice gymnasium, which, I wouldn't say practice gymnasium, but it's the smaller gymnasium. But apparently it's where the magic happens, according to UC Irvine SID, or Sports Information Director, Stacy Shackelford. But her statement proved to be true, as UC Irvine wound up winning in a packed crowd. I say the word packed crowd very well because there wasn't too much seating. But the Anteaters wound up winning against the Gauchos 25-19, 23-25, 24-26, or 26-24, and 25-22. The Anteaters were led by Mariana Bertoloni, who had 15 kills. Isabella Scarlett had 14 kills. Ella Gardner had 13 kills. And Hunter... I'm probably butchering this girl's name, and I do apologize, but Hunter Riedel, she had... No, it's Hunter Riedel. I'm pretty sure it's Riedel. Hunter Riedel had 12 kills, so that's a balanced four-headed monster attack. And Ashley Hain, the head coach of UC Irvine, talked to me about that, and she said they found a lineup that worked well, and they really had some players clicking. Campbell Jensen also added 21 digs, and Nicole Feliciano added 19 digs to go along with her 46 assists. Jensen also had 3 service aces as Irvine hit 223. My takeaway for Irvine is this. It's about time they wound up putting together a complete match and winning against a noteworthy opponent. And this is no knock on UC Irvine. They have had their moments where they've tried to pull off a big win. They almost beat Cal Poly and UC Davis, wound up getting reverse swept. They almost beat Boston College, which I think could have been a big win for Irvine, but Boston College was not having any of it. So it's about time Irvine wound up winning a big match and having a big win to their resume. And my thing is this for UC Irvine. With this win, this definitely helps their cause of getting that final 6 spot. Because with UC San Diego unable to partake in the Big West Conference tournament and the NCAA tournament, UC Irvine would be the next team behind UC San Diego to get that spot. So UC Irvine is putting themselves in a good position to clinch said spot. As the Gauchos were led by Michelle Owobite, as she had 17 kills, while Brianna McKnight added 10 kills. Santa Barbara actually led 22-20, if I'm not mistaken, in set 4, but wound up giving up the next 5 points, which is just a sucky feeling. They did have 3 players crack double digits in terms of digs, as Grace McIntosh had 11 digs to go along with her 24 assists, and then Owobite and McCall Peed, they both each had 10 digs. My takeaway for Santa Barbara is this. I knew they wouldn't be undefeated in the Big West Conference for too long. And if you remember my interview with Daniel Gilman, I basically asked him, is Hawaii going to be undefeated in Big West Conference play? And he said no, it's just so difficult to go undefeated in the Big West Conference. And it really is difficult considering you have to go from road, city to city, on the road, and having to defend your home court as well. And honestly, it really can take a toll on you. And there's so much mental defense in terms of trying to defend your home court, and there's a target on your back the more you win. And for the Gauchos, they were winning all these games. They had beaten Long Beach State on the road for the first time since 2011. They beat Hawaii in 5. They beat Cal Poly in straight sets. So for the Gauchos, they a loss was bound to happen. I just didn't think it would be against Irvine, but when you look at the circumstances against the Anteaters and the Gauchos, you have to remember this is not the Bren Event Center. The ceiling is not as high, and you're crammed into a little, I wouldn't say a little gymnasium, but you're crammed into a gymnasium where it is super loud, and Shackelford did tell me that the crowd was super loud and you could not hear anything. And I could only imagine what the crowd was like at that match. Even though it was like only 500-ish people, close to 600. So moving on from Friday's matchups and jumping to Saturday, we have the Citadel taking on Western Carolina. And this was played in Cullowhee, as the Citadel was undefeated at 23-0, while Western Carolina, which wound up getting swept by the Citadel in the first round of conference play, they were looking to pull off the win. The Citadel was actually coming off of a win over Mercer, which that was a matchup to watch for, if you remember last week, but I didn't think the Citadel would sweep, especially since it was on the road. But for the Citadel, they wound up losing the first set, 25-16. Second set, which featured 12 ties and 4 lead changes, the Citadel took that set 25-20. Then Western Carolina returned the favor, taking that set 25-20. And then for the Citadel, they took set 4, 25-15, never trailing, only having one tie. Then the fifth set occurred. So the fifth set was quite a wild ride, as it was tight, and there were 8 ties, and the last tie that you all saw was 8-8 between Western Carolina and the Citadel. But Western Carolina went on a 7-2 run to end the match, as they wound up taking the fifth set 15-10, handing the Citadel their first loss of the season, which was darn right impressive. Bailey Hartsaw led the way with 19 kills, while Levy Weidman had 12 kills, and Allie Morse added 10 kills. They outblocked the Citadel 10-6, and the digs were even, 84-84. Serving was kind of interesting, if you ask me. Western Carolina didn't have too many service errors, but they didn't have too many aces. But you could say that the service ace and service error ratio between both teams was evenly matched. For the Citadel, they were led by Allie Ruffin, who had 24 kills, while Maddie Cardenas added 10 kills. My takeaway for the Citadel is this. You were bound to lose, and you'd rather lose right now instead of in your conference tournament or in the NCAA tournament, because now you no longer have the pressure of staying undefeated, kind of like Long Beach State's team from, I think, 2001, which wound up winning all of their matches, which included number 1 Nebraska at the time of their season. And Long Beach State was undefeated going into the national championship match against Stanford, and Stanford wound up beating them in the final, which obviously probably must have stung for all those Long Beach State fans. Heading down to Champaign, Illinois in Big Ten land, we have number 16 Purdue taking on Illinois. And Illinois really impressed me as they took down Purdue in 4 sets. Purdue wound up winning the first match 25-20, or the first set 25-20, and then Illinois ran the table, winning the next 3 sets 25-19, 26-24, and 25-18 to win the match altogether. Both hitting percentages from both teams were rather low, but that was because the blocks were high, as Illinois only hit 201, while Purdue hit 118. As Raina Terry led the way with 19 kills. She was the only player in double digits in terms of kills for the Illini, as Kennedy Collins was the next kill leader up, who had 9 kills. Caroline Barnes led the defense for Illinois with 16 digs, while the blocks were led by Collins, who had 9 blocks, or 9 block assists. So all in all for Illinois, my takeaway for them is this. They haven't really had the greatest and most flashiest season, but a win over Purdue is not bad. I know it was in Champaign, Illinois, I get it, or Huff Hall. However, it's still a pretty good win because Purdue has posted some pretty solid wins and pretty pretty darn good wins as well. As Purdue was led by Eva Hudson, who had 18 kills. Raven Colvin had 13 kills. Chloe Chicoine, she had 11 kills. Maddie Skirmerhorn had 22 digs, while Chicoine added 14 digs. My takeaway for Purdue is this, and by the way, Illinois outblocked Purdue 16-12, while Purdue outdug Illinois 59-50. The service ace and service error ratio battle was pretty much even. Purdue had 2 aces and 5 service errors, while Illinois had 4 aces and 10 service errors. But my takeaway for Purdue is this. They're back to having that up and down week yet again. Last week they had 2 great wins, one being against Indiana on their home floor, in West Lafayette, and then the other being against Penn State in Rec Hall. But now they lose to Illinois, which, I mean, Illinois isn't bad, as they're actually 1 game behind. They were 1 game behind them. However, this is a game that I really think Purdue could have won. But I will give credit to Illinois. They also beat Indiana earlier in the week, taking them down in 5. So Illinois is starting to show some sort of chops. I just didn't think that Purdue would honestly struggle on the road. And this is another one of those what-if games. What if Purdue actually takes that 3rd set? Do they ride that momentum into set 4, or do they go to a 5th set? It's just another head-scratcher for the Boilermakers. Staying in Big Ten land, we have probably the biggest win of the weekend, as we had Michigan State taking down Penn State on the road in 5 sets, as Michigan State won the first set 25-19, but then Penn State came storming back, winning the next 2 sets 25-11 and 25-16. But the Spartans, being the scrappy team that they are, they did not quit. They wound up taking set 4 25-18. And then in set number 5, Michigan State wound up taking that 5th set 18-16, completing the win over number, I want to say it was 13 per Penn State. But my takeaway for Michigan State is this. I want to say this is the biggest win of their new coaches, of Leah Johnson's tenure. Either way, it's a huge win for the Spartans. I did not think that they were going to pull out the win, and I'm very impressed. So I will say this about Michigan State. They're not having the greatest season, but like I said, this is probably their biggest win in the tenure of the Leah Johnson era, and honestly, I can't knock that. I could just say that this is probably Michigan State's Super Bowl or national championship match, but they're honestly a quiet 14-9, which is not bad if you ask me. And they're 6-6 in conference play. Now again, they're not posting the biggest wins out there. Like, this was probably their biggest win, and they were coming off of a straight set loss to Wisconsin, which that was kind of Wisconsin's get right game after losing to Nebraska. But they have beaten Michigan both times, which is pretty solid. But that's kind of where the buck stops. They also beat Iowa, which is having a pretty good season as well, but it's not really ultimately flashy. So Michigan State obviously is posted their biggest win, and they do have another pair of matches that could add to that winning streak, as they have Maryland and Iowa, and then next week they have Ohio State, which is unfortunately a train wreck, and then they also have Purdue on the road, which Purdue is having that up and down season. But if for some reason Purdue does well this week, then if the pattern continues, maybe Michigan State gets them at their place. But I wouldn't hold my breath on Michigan State making the tournament. I like Leah Johnson. She's a fantastic coach, and she had so much emotion in her eyes following that win. So for Michigan State to pull off that win is rather impressive. Penn State was led by Jess Merzick, who had 19 kills. That's kind of where the buck stopped, as their next kill leader was Cameron Hanna, who had 18 kills. Gillian Grimes had 13 digs, and Mac Pedraza had 12 digs to go along with her 37 assists. My takeaway for Penn State is this. What on earth happened to you? How do you go from okay, it was one thing to lose to Purdue on your home floor, but you lost to Michigan State? I get it. Michigan State is much improved, but Michigan State isn't really one of the better teams in the Big Ten. They're not on the level of Wisconsin, Nebraska, Penn State, Purdue. You get the point. But I will say this about Penn State. I hope that's kind of their get-right game, or their wake-up call, because their next opponent is Nebraska, and they better hope that they bring their A-game against the Huskers, because the Huskers have kind of owned them in the most recent matches between the two. And then about to close out the notable matchups that happened in week number 10 on Saturday. We had Long Beach State defeating UC Davis in 4, 25-23, 28-30, 25-19, and 25-16. My quick takeaway from this matchup is this. Long Beach State, I know they dropped that second set, and they did well, but they're still going to have to do a little bit better on the road. They also had to go 4 with UC Riverside, and this is kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of their little mini gauntlet. UC Riverside is improved, pretty kind of, sort of, but Davis, this was the matchup I was a little concerned about. And when I saw Davis taking that second set against Long Beach, I had a feeling Long Beach was kind of in for a little bit of a rough ride against the Aggies. Fortunately for them, they were able to right the ship, and they were able to take the next 2 sets. And for Long Beach State, they're kind of running out of home matches, because this week they are home against CSUN and Bakersfield, which is good. But next week and the following week, they have Cal Poly and Santa Barbara on the road, which is going to be very tough. And then the following week, or the last week of the Big West Conference regular season, they have Hawaii on the road, and they've also got UC San Diego, which is kind of their Super Bowl or national championship match, because UC San Diego can't do anything after that Long Beach State match, because unfortunately for UC San Diego, they're still in the transition limbo from Division II to Division I. And then the matchup I went to, staying within the Big West Conference, is Cal Poly at UC Irvine. This was in Crawford Hall yet again. From what I'm hearing, it's kind of the main water pipeline that kind of went out in the Bren Event Center for UC Irvine, but I can't ultimately confirm that. What I can confirm is that UC Irvine might be having their final 2 matches at home in Crawford Hall against Cal State Fullerton and Hawaii next week, depending on if they can't get this problem fixed. As Cal Poly took the first 2 sets, 25-22 and 25-21. Long story short, in set 1, UC Irvine actually led 16-12, but then for Cal Poly, being the pretty good team that they are, they just served tough, and they just made it so much tougher on the Anteaters, as it went from 16-12 all the way to a 13-3 run to end this, to eventually, well, not 13-3 run, but 13-6 run to eventually end the set. And Irvine just unfortunately kind of got rattled. And then the second set, I wouldn't say it wasn't that great for Irvine, because Cal Poly actually led a good portion of the way, and they have some big-time hitters. It's not just Tommy Stockham. They have some other good hitters, like Lizzie Markovska, and Annabelle Falcon, and they also have Amy Hyatt, who transitioned from outside hitter to middle blocker, even though she's listed as outside hitter on the roster of Long Beach or Cal Poly. But for UC Irvine, they really were on fire in the next 2 sets. As set 3, they wound up storming past Cal Poly 25-12. And then set 4, oh my goodness, this was a whirlwind, as UC Irvine blew past Cal Poly in set 4, 25-9. It was so bad for Cal Poly that UC Irvine actually had a perfect side-out percentage, as they were 9 for 9, which was darn right impressive. And also, Irvine hit a whopping 650 in that 4th set. And they also hit 429 in set 3. And then Cal Poly hit negative 37. Then the fifth set, UC Irvine had that momentum from set 4. They led 5-1, and then eventually they led 9-4 in the fifth set. But Cal Poly, being the very scrappy and devious team that they are, they needed this win. Because they knew if they went back home against UC Santa Barbara with a loss, that would totally rattle their confidence. And remember, that's a short week, going from Saturday all the way to Tuesday, which is tomorrow as of this recording. But they eventually got the lead down to 1 as they eventually trailed 10-9, and then eventually they tied it up at 11-11, and they eventually had the first match point as Tommy Stockham was just on fire. She was literally superwoman in that fifth set. She had 6 kills, which I know you think it's not ultimately impressive, but 6 kills when your team is in dire need of winning that fifth set is very impressive. And remember, there are no challenge systems as well because there was no replay monitor. The whole media table was just crammed into one. I was fortunate enough to get a spot at the table. And then eventually the match ended on a double hit violation, which I hate. I kind of hate that for Irvine. Unfortunately, this freshman setter had a double contact violation, which I don't really like those calls because if it were like a touch call, I could understand. Or if it were a that ball was in or that ball was out call, then that's another understandable call. But ending the match on a double contact or a lift violation, it's a little, or a violation that can't be challenged, it's kind of sucky if you ask me. I just feel, in my opinion, I know referees are human, and I'm not going to rag on the referees, but you got to let the kids decide that one. You kind of got to let the kids decide it in a fifth set, especially in a match like that, as Cal Poly wound up winning set 5, 16-14. Tommy Stockham led the way with 17 kills, while Annabelle Falcon and Lizzie Markovska each added 10 kills. Hunter Rydell was a freaking beast for UC Irvine. She had 23 kills, and she actually got help as well, as Ella Gardner, Isabella Scarlett, and Emma Napoleon each had 9 kills. My only concern for UC Irvine, and my takeaway for them is this. If Mariana Bertoloni has a better game than what she had, than like she had in the previous game, I think Irvine wins this matchup. Unfortunately, she did not, and sadly, UC Irvine takes the loss, but it was still a pretty darn good matchup and a pretty darn good week. It was not pretty darn good matchup. It was a very good matchup as Irvine showed that they could really hang with the tough teams. And if you saw my interview with Ashley Hain, she basically said it best. I think teams should be fearing them more so than teams, UC Irvine should be fearing certain teams in the Big West Conference, because Irvine does have some dogs, and honestly, they could hang with anybody. They just have to finish up the set. And the sad thing about UC Irvine is they have not won a 5-set match all year. Meanwhile, for Cal Poly, they've been in a bunch of 5-set matches, primarily in the Big West Conference. The previous night, they actually had to go 5 with Cal State Fullerton, and they wound up winning that one, though I had a feeling Cal Poly would win. They also went 5 with Long Beach State, a match I think, a fifth setter that I think they could have won. They were up 6-1 and then wound up losing 15-13, so Cal Poly having the 5-set experience really helped them, and also having Tommy Stockham go superwoman on UC Irvine in that fifth set really helped as well. And then to close off Saturday's matches and heading up north, we have LMU taking on Pacific. So Pacific wound up beating LMU in 5 sets, 18-25, 25-22, 17-25, 25-16, and 15-12. My takeaway for Pacific is this, as they were led by Alexa Edwards, who had 18 kills, while Emily Van Groningen had 12 kills. Dorina Kumanova, as well as Abby Miller, each had 11 kills. And then they had 75 digs, and they had 4 different players with double-digit digs, led by Kumanova, who had 18 digs, as well as Zoe Morales. My takeaway for Pacific is this. They're not the flashiest team in the West Coast Conference. They're not on Pepperdine's level, but I will say Pacific is so scrappy. They are well known for pulling off at least one big win in the West Coast Conference. LMU was led by Jacqueline Moore, who had 16 kills. She had 556, which was pretty impressive. Amethyst Harper had 15 kills, Kari Geisberger 12 kills, and Michelle Schaefer 10 kills to go along with 23 digs. My takeaway for LMU is this. I don't think this is as bad of a loss as I initially thought it would be, but losing to Pacific is kind of hurting your chances of winning the West Coast Conference. They were already behind the 8-ball as they lost both of their matchups to Pepperdine, and they don't have any more matchups with the Waves. So now they're 2.5 games back of Pepperdine, and the only way Pepperdine doesn't win the West Coast Conference and LMU does is if Pepperdine straight up lays a goose egg and then LMU just runs the table. But I don't think that's happening the way Pepperdine is playing, because Pepperdine has in their schedule, the next 3 opponents are against the bottom teams in the West Coast Conference, and then they close out against San Diego, San Francisco, and Pacific, not in any particular order. And also Pepperdine has a matchup against SMU, which was kind of a last-minute scheduled match because the West Coast Conference does not have a conference tournament like some of these other conferences do. So that is that for Saturday's notable matchups. Jumping over to Sunday, we had the biggest matchup of the day. Number 2 Wisconsin defeating Minnesota in straight sets 25-23, 25-20, and 25-19. I'm obviously kidding. This was not a big match. This was televised on Fox, depending on where you were at. Unfortunately, I sadly couldn't get this match on Fox. Something regarding LAFC was on Fox during the Wisconsin-Minnesota match. And I will say for Wisconsin and any other Wisconsin fans, after seeing the Packers lose to the Vikings, you had something to cheer for because Wisconsin straight up manhandled the Golden Gophers. For Minnesota, this was just another one of those bleh matches just because everything just went incorrectly. Nothing went correctly. And also, I will say this, Michigan wound up beating Ohio State previously before the Wisconsin-Minnesota match, depending on where you were watching from. So, Wisconsin and Minnesota, as well as Ohio State Ohio State, Michigan got to be on Fox. And Michigan, despite not having the greatest season, they wound up beating Ohio State, which, ouch, that is just a brutal loss for the Buckeyes. But before I continue with my notable matches to watch for, the top 10 committee rankings were released on Sunday, and this was all the way from October 28th, which was Saturday. So after Saturday's matches, the committee locked it up, and they basically said, here's our top 10 committee. So number 10, Tennessee. Number 9, Arkansas. Number 8, Pitt. Number 7, Texas. Number 6, Oregon. Number 5, Washington State. Number 4, Louisville. Number 3, Wisconsin. Interesting choice. Number 2, Stanford. And the number 1 team via the committee and their rankings through October 28th, 2023 is Nebraska. So, interesting top 10 if you ask me. Nebraska is obviously the consensus number 1, but Wisconsin is behind Stanford. But that's because of RPI and everything that goes into it. It's a whole numbers game. However, it seemed like the committee kind of got it wrong because after the committee released their top 10, Stanford wound up taking a tumble to Arizona State, which was number 21 at the time in terms of the AVCA coaches poll rankings, as Arizona State not only beat Stanford, they swept Stanford 25-16, 25-21, and 25-14 on the road in Tempe. So this was a huge win for Arizona State, as this was their second top 5 win this season. And it also snapped Stanford's 29 conference match winning streak. And also, Arizona State held Stanford to a season-low 194 hitting percentage. So, Arizona State did everything right, and they also hit 311 as well. The only thing that they kind of didn't do right was they got out-blocked, but they only got out-blocked by 1, so we're not going to fault Arizona State for that. As Arizona State was led by Marta Levinska, who had 17 kills. She hit 371. Now, I really wanted to pick Arizona State as my team of the week. However, Kansas State just had a better case just because they proved a lot to me in terms of BYU. They proved to me that BYU is not a good road team, and they are easily beatable on the road. Now, for Arizona State, I'm not going to take anything away from them. They really proved that they could hang with the big girls, and handing Stanford their first conference loss this season is no laughing matter. I will say this, Arizona State has proven themselves, and I think they deserve to still be ranked. And also, I feel that some of their other losses were just kind of the whole any given week in terms of the Pac-12. Because you got to remember, they lost to Stanford the first time, and then their other losses are against Oregon State, and I want to say it was Washington State. But regardless, Arizona State is really proving themselves as they really showed Stanford who's boss, as Katie Baird led the way for the Cardinal with 12 kills, Aaliyah Rubin, 8 kills, Kendall Kipp only had 6 kills. That's a problem. When your star player, Kendall Kipp, is struggling, that's when you know you are not doing something correct. And it sucks because Stanford was ranked number 2 by the selection committee, but I don't think they're going to be number 2 for long. But it just goes to show that committee rankings don't mean squat diddly until the final day, until Selection Sunday. And then finally, to close out the notable matches that happened this past week in Week 10, is Oregon State defeating number 6 Washington State in Pullman in 5 sets. Oregon State wound up losing the first set 25-21, but taking the next 2 sets by scores of 25-20 respectively. The Cougars took set 4 25-18, but then Oregon State took a nail-biter in set 5 15-13, which included 11 ties, as the Beavers were led by Peyton Seuss, who had 18 kills, while Michael Vernon had 17 kills, Megan Sheridan added 16 kills. That is a well-balanced three-headed monster. And also Lauren Rummel added 8 kills. So my takeaway for Oregon State is this. Again, just like some of the other teams in the other conferences, they're not a flashy team. They are not going to pop out at you saying, oh, this team's pretty good in this conference. This is only their 4th Pac-12 win. But this is their biggest win of the season. And also, I forgot to mention, Oregon State wound up sweeping the Washington schools, or beating both Washington schools in the same week since 2017 when they beat Washington and Washington State that year. I also should make note that Oregon State beat Washington on Friday in Seattle in 3-1, which is very good if you ask me. Washington, I have said in the past, they are an underrated team. They're not the team that they were in years past as LMA Powell has graduated, but they still have some studs. Washington State was led by Pia Timmer, who had 21 kills, while Magda Yarashova, yes, it's not Jelarova, it's Magda Yarashova. She had 11 kills to go along with a 348 hitting percentage, and Iman Isanovich added 10 kills. I just feel Washington State is missing something. It doesn't look like they were shorthanded, if you ask me. I just feel that maybe this was one of those tough weekends, and maybe the Oregon loss just carried over. Because now Washington State has lost 3 of their last 4, and I don't want to say this to be disrespectful, but I feel they're still suffering from the USC loss from the previous Friday. So, dare I say it, USC kind of broke Washington State. Thanks, Trojans. Also, Oregon State ran a 6-2 offense. So that is that for all of the notable matchups from Week 10, or notable results from Week 10. So some other quick notables. Louisville swept their matches against Florida State and Miami at home last weekend. So my takeaway for Louisville is this. I don't think they're in any more danger in the ACC. However, they do have a big matchup against Georgia Tech, which is going to be a big-time matchup. And Georgia Tech is still hanging around that top 3 in the ACC. They're just right below Louisville and Pitt. For Florida State and Miami, it just goes to show that Louisville is still the top dog in the ACC. I just don't think that Florida State and Miami can hang with those two. And that's no disrespect to the Seminoles and the Hurricanes, but I just think Louisville is playing much better than they were following that loss to NC State. And then also, now that I've talked about Big West Conference play, UC Santa Barbara, Hawaii, and Long Beach State have clinched spots in the first annual Big West Conference tournament. So only 3 spots remain. It looks like Cal Poly is going to get one. It looks like Davis is going to get one. So it just boils down to UC Irvine and UC Riverside. Maybe Cal State Bakersfield if they play their cards right. But they have to play their cards right. But I digress. And then with the Citadel losing last weekend, there's only one team that remains undefeated in NCAA women's volleyball in Division 1. And that just so happens to be... forget it. I'm not going to do a drum roll. Nebraska. Nebraska wound up beating Maryland and Rutgers. As Nebraska, they're the consensus number 1. They're number 1 in everything. They're your only undefeated team remaining. So hopefully that doesn't come back to nip them in the butt come NCAA tournament time, because it's so tough to finish a season undefeated. I mean, Penn State did so back in 2008, 2009, I want to say, but it just is so tough to keep that streak alive, because that mentally and physically, and Nebraska's got still such a young team, but the scary thing is that they have such a young team, and that they're going to be really good in the future. So Nebraska is balling like it's nobody's business. They're kicking butt and taking names. All right, but that is that for Week 10 in the NCAA women's volleyball world. Let's go over this week's AVCA coaches polls in Division 1. The AVCA/TaraFlex coaches poll in Division 1. 25 through 21 consists of Marquette at 25, Auburn at 24, Western Kentucky at 23, Houston at 22, and Baylor at 21. 20 through 16 consists of Florida at 20, Purdue at 19, Dayton at 18, Creighton at 17, and Penn State at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Arizona State at 15, Kansas at 14, Kentucky at 13, BYU at 12, and Tennessee at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Georgia Tech at 10, Washington State at 9, Arkansas at 8, Oregon at 7, and Pitt at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Stanford at 5, Texas at 4, Louisville at 3, Wisconsin at 2, and your still number 1 team in the AVCA/TaraFlex coaches poll is Nebraska. Like I said, they're the consensus number 1. They're the outright number 1. Nobody is not putting them anywhere below number 1 until further notice. Get used to it. So I actually forgot to mention one match in my recap, and that was Arkansas-Florida last Sunday. So number 10 Arkansas swept, then number 10 Arkansas swept, then number 19 Florida. And for Arkansas, their historic season continues, and as you just saw in the rankings, they continue to rise as they're now number 8, which is the highest they've been ranked. For Florida, this has just been one of those years where everything that could go wrong will go wrong, as they now have another player that is missing the rest of the season, and that just so happens to be Anna Dixon, who transferred from Missouri. So she actually has a season-ending elbow and wrist injury, so sadly, this being her final year of eligibility, unless she has a redshirt year that we don't know of, this is the worst way to go out. And I feel horrible for Anna Dixon. She announced this on Instagram, and man, Florida just cannot catch a break, because they've already got Kira Hudson out, and they lost Alexis Stuckey back in that Wisconsin match. But now they have a third player out for the rest of the season. And I hate that they're out for the remainder of the year, but I love that they're all in good spirits, as Mary Weiss posted a photo of them on X saying that these three players will be back onto the court sooner rather than later. And for Anna Dixon, she said this isn't the end for me in terms of my volleyball career, but it is the end of me playing middle blocker. Because if you remember, Anna Dixon went from outside hitter to middle blocker. So it sucks that Florida is becoming a walking injured reserve. No offense to the Gators, obviously. However, it kind of makes you wonder, how many more of their top players are they going to lose to a season-ending injury? It's like the Chargers and the Angels, the Los Angeles Chargers and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim had a baby, and Florida women's volleyball this year has become that baby in terms of season-ending injuries. And that's no disrespect to Florida. I mean that with all due respect to Mary Wise and her team. But unfortunately, it just seems to happen, and it's not like Madden where you can just turn off injuries. You just have to keep rolling with the punches, and you just have to hope for the best and hope that your players can step up. On that note of Florida, I do have to give a shout out to Kennedy Muff, who wound up surpassing 4,000 assists in her college career. So a tip of the hat to her on that one. All right, but that's going to do it for the NCAA women's volleyball portion of the show for the time being. When we come back, we'll have the CIF Southern Section Division 1 finals preview, as well as the pool play recap. And then we will also have the Long Beach State men's volleyball schedule breakdown. And then we have Week 11 to preview in terms of the NCAA women's volleyball season. So keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back momentarily.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and centers. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with the second half of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely do check out all of our amazing shows, such as Chi-Town Weekly, which goes on primarily 1 hour before Set Point goes on. Also check out Cincy Sports and The Defining Moment, as well as all of our shows on IE Sports Radio. So, in the chat room, we actually had Patty Beck saying Buffalo women's volleyball is doing good, or UB women's volleyball is doing great. And then Larry B, thank you for popping in, he said trick or treat. And he said CBU has won 4 straight in the Western Athletic Conference. So, to go over those matchups, and I will agree, Buffalo is having a fantastic season. They're an underrated 20-5 on the season, and they're 10-3 in conference play. And they actually lead their division in the Mid-American Conference, as there's an East Division and a West Division, and Buffalo leads the East Division at a 10-3 record with Ohio right 2 games behind them. Western Michigan is kind of leading the entire conference with an iron fist, with Ball State right behind them. But Buffalo, I will give them props. They are really doing well in the East Division of the Mid-American Conference. And then as for CBU, or California Baptist, they have won 4 straight, and they're sitting at fourth in the WAC standings. And if they do play their cards right, they could, hence the word could, possibly, maybe, hence the word maybe, pull off some wins in the WAC tournament. Because there is a WAC tournament, kind of like some of these other conference tournaments, like the Mid-American Conference tournament and the Big West Conference tournament. And to go over CBU's record, they're 14-9 overall, 7-5 in conference, like I just mentioned, which isn't bad. I mean, their record is above 500, so I'll give them that much. And they've put up a fight against some of the better teams like Stephen F. Austin and Abilene Christian and Grand Canyon. But as Larry mentioned, they've won 4 in a row, being against Seattle, Utah Valley, Southern Utah, and Utah Tech. So good on CBU, the Lady Lancers, and hopefully they can continue their great play through to the WAC tournament and possibly to the NCAA tournament. As long as they're not under the whole Division II to Division I transfer period, which I don't think they are from what I'm seeing, but I could be wrong. But let's move on from that, as we have some CIF Southern Section girls volleyball to go over, as the finals have been decided as in Division 1. I'm just going to keep it to Division 1 just because for purposes of this show, this podcast, we are a minute and 14-ish minutes into this whole thing as of this recording, so I don't want to go too long. But for Division 1, the finals have been set. Mater Dei will be taking on Miracosta in the final. So Mater Dei wound up beating Marymount in straight sets, and then they swept Sierra Canyon in the last day of pool play, while Miracosta wound up sweeping Alamany, and they swept Huntington Beach as well. Both Mater Dei and Miracosta had home court advantage, and they were the top seeds in their pool, so it's kind of no surprise that Miracosta and Mater Dei are meeting with one another. That's kind of the reason why I picked those two teams to make it to the finals. But in pool play, we also had Huntington Beach beating Los Alamitos. It was the battle of the former set point guests in Dave Huber of Los Alamitos, the head coach of the Griffins, taking on Craig Pizzanti, the head coach of Huntington Beach. And if you all saw my interviews on X and on Instagram, then you all will see their perspectives. Well, at least for Huntington Beach's side. But for Huntington Beach, they fell short against Miracosta, but they're probably going to get a respectable seed in state. They may get the 4 or 5 seed depending on what Max Preps has them ranked. Because when it comes to state, Max Preps is kind of takes every team in consideration, not just the southern section teams, but for like the San Diego section, maybe the LA section. It all depends on how high the rankings are of said teams. Like last year, Cathedral Catholic was the number 1 seed, even though Sierra Canyon wound up winning in the southern section. But that was because Cathedral Catholic was just demolishing teams, and they hadn't lost a set up to that point, and they hadn't lost a match. But backpedaling and circling back to Mater Dei versus Miracosta in the finals. All right, this is round 3 between the Monarchs and the Mustangs, as Miracosta wound up winning the first matchup in straight sets at Miracosta. And then Mater Dei wound up taking the second matchup against Miracosta in the Durango Tournament Finals. So now, this one is for all the marbles. Miracosta has not won a CIF Southern Section Championship since 2008 when they went undefeated. So I talked about undefeated teams earlier. I talked about how it's so tough to keep an undefeated season going, but Miracosta really made it easy that year. I think Alex Kleinman was on that team. Not entirely sure, though. Meanwhile, Mater Dei, they're looking for championship number 7, or CIF Southern Section Championship number 7, and the 4th one under head coach Dan Odell, who has won over 200 matches, as the Monarchs probably have a very stacked team. And it's not just upperclassmen with players like Samara Gordon, who's bound for Michigan. They have like very good underclassmen, such as Layli Ostavar. She definitely is really stepped up, and whoever lands her is getting a really good player. And I can't wait to see what her volleyball career looks like in the near future. And all the Ostavar girls are good. Not just Kaylee. It's Layli as well as Ava. Ava's already committed to UC Santa Barbara, so she's already in Big West Country. But for the entirety of the finals, this is going to be a very fun final, and it's going to really boil down to who serves tougher. Miracosta serves like a machine. Mater Dei, they really put the emphasis on serve receive. They really are so cynical about how good their serve receive is. And honestly, I really think that either of these teams could win. I really would. It's really tough to predict who's going to come out on top. I really think that both of these teams have a legit shot, and it's 50-50 when it comes to these two teams, because, again, they've split their two matchups, and Isabel Clark is just on a whole other level for Mater Dei, as well as Samara Gordon and Layli Ostavar. If I said Kaylee, I apologize. It's Layli Ostavar, who is the second youngest I think she's like she and Kaylee are both tied for the youngest, behind Ava. But I digress. And then also Mater Dei has Melissa Kawa, who is just a digging dynamo as she's heading to Stanford. Tessa Hurley is a great serve receiver. Emma Kingston, who's a 6'4 freshman, she is getting progressively better and better as the season goes by. And Mater Dei runs a 6'2 offense. It looked like it was going to be doom and gloom with Ava Ostavar getting injured, but with her coming back, she can run the 6'2 offense, as well as Julia Kakis, who is bound for Brown. So for Mater Dei, they are just a machine, and they just have all their bases loaded in terms of their talent level. And it's not just senior leadership, like I said. They've got some good underclassmen. Now, for Miracosta, here's my thing. Charlie Furbringer, that's the name you all got to look at. Charlie Furbringer is bound for Wisconsin for a reason. She is just a strong facilitator. She serves really tough. She runs the offense to a T. She really fakes out the opposing team's defenses. Wisconsin's getting a good one once their setters have graduated and they're out of eligibility. And Charlie Furbringer really spreads the ball around. Audrey Flanagan is a phenomenal outside hitter. Chloe Hines and Bryn Schenkel, they're both really good hitters. Taylor Deckard, only a junior, she is a fantastic libero. And both of these teams have not lost a best 3 out of 5 match. So something's got to give here. But for me, both of these teams are just so darn good. It's so tough to pick between which team is going to come out on top. I mean, for the boys' side, I knew it was fairly easy who was going to come out. But when it comes to modern-day Miracosta, it really is tough. Both these teams are well coached, and they just have their bases loaded in terms of not just underclassmen talent, but upperclassmen, and then they just serve tough. They're both fantastic defensively. All right, but here's my prediction. And who do I have winning? Well, I'm about to enrage a lot of fans with this. And I do expect forgiveness, but I think Miracosta pulls off the win. Here's why. I think Miracosta really serves tough, and they really handled Huntington Beach fairly easily. And Huntington, and I'm not just basing it off of that matchup. I'm basing it off of how they play in one of the tougher leagues out there in the Bay League. Don't get me wrong, the Trinity League is good because in Division 2 they've got Orange Lutheran and J. Sarah in the final. But I just think Miracosta has been so consistent all year, and even in losses via tournament, they have shown to have a great turnaround, and they have shown some grit and resolve. And you got to remember, Miracosta had the whole description of this team is supposed to be rebuilding. This team is supposed to be a year or two away. But Charlie Furbringer, after she managed to win gold with the U.S. Junior Youth National Team or whatnot, she had Miracosta on a tear. Now, I'm not saying Mater Dei is going to lose easily, but I will say Mater Dei is going to have to play their best game. This has to be the game they come out swinging, firing, and playing the best darn defense they have to. Because if they don't, they're all but screwed in terms of the final. And thankfully, it's not going to be at Miracosta High School. It's going to be at Cerritos College at 7 p.m. Pacific time. If I were a volleyball fan or a high school volleyball fan in general, I would totally buy my ticket to watch this matchup and get a good seat as well. I'm not going to be a part of the media just because reasons, but it's all good. I'll get to see the fans' perspective, and hopefully for the case of I don't have Mater Dei fans listening, on the off chance they might listen to this, hopefully don't take it personally if Mater Dei does win. I'm not saying Mater Dei is going to lose, but they're going to have to play some darn good volleyball. And Miracosta is hungry for a CIF Southern Section Championship. If they win, it'll be 15 years since they last won a CIF Southern Section Championship. Maybe even a few days less than that. But it's not going to be easy. Mater Dei is going to be very cynical in terms of preparing its team and making sure it gets everything down to a T. But I do have Miracosta winning the CIF Southern Section Division 1 championship. So that's that for the CIF Southern Section / High School Girls Volleyball preview. I'm just going to keep it to Division 1 just because I don't want to go too further in depth because we have another show in about 34 minutes. So, as of this recording. So, let's jump on over to some NCAA men's volleyball as we have Long Beach State men's volleyball releasing their schedule for 2024. So, starting off the season, they technically don't officially start the season until January 12th, but December 31st, they love having this exhibition match. They play Alberta of, I think, Canada, and they love playing this team quite a bit. This time it's going to be at home. It's not going to be in Canada, or in Alberta. But regardless, you're going to get a sneak peek of Long Beach State on New Year's Eve, which I think is pretty darn good. Their matchup begins at 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., so they got two separate matches against Alberta. And then they start the season at home against Long Island. Now, I don't think I'll be at the season opener, unfortunately, just because I will probably be in Texas visiting my brother, but I'll also try to be there for the First Point tournament. Or not the First Point tournament, the First Point Challenge. But back to Long Beach State. They kick off the season on January 12th against Long Island. Then the day after, they play St. Francis, the Red Flash, not the Bulldogs, which shut down their entire athletics program. Sad. Then on January 17th, they hit the road to take on Merrimack. And then 2 days after, they play NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. And then on January 20th, the day after they play NJIT, they hit the road and play George Mason. So they've got a 3-game road trip, which I think is pretty good. I mean, it's going to get Long Beach State involved in terms of the road, as they've got a Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday matchup. Then January 26th, I hope volleyball fans or men's volleyball fans are looking forward to this because they finally get their wish. They finally get to see Pepperdine and Long Beach State playing, because I'm sick and tired of hearing men's volleyball fans saying, Long Beach State should schedule Pepperdine again. Well, there you go. Alan Knipe just shut your mouths up, and now you get to see Pepperdine Long Beach State. I don't want to hear any belly aching in case one team posts a dominant sweep. Anyway, so the day after Long Beach State plays Pepperdine, they host Concordia University. Both Pepperdine and Concordia will be at Long Beach State, or the Pyramid. Then on February 2nd and 3rd, Long Beach State will host King University of Tennessee, which I think is pretty cool. So we get to see Ryan Booher's team. King actually made the NCAA tournament last year, wound up winning their conference tournament, and they made it in the NCAA tournament. That's actually going to be their first matchup against an NCAA tournament opponent from last year. And then after those two matchups against King, they will host UCLA on February 9th, which is a Friday. And then the day after, Long Beach State will be hitting the road to Los Angeles to take on UCLA. And then February 16th, Long Beach State will host Central State, and the day after they host Edward Waters. So, interesting two opponents right there. Central State and Edward Waters, I don't think have played Long Beach State, so I think this is going to be a first for two of those matchups. And I want to say the reason why Edward Waters and Central State are facing Long Beach State is because you have to remember, Long Beach State is hosting the NCAA tournament. So, I imagine that is the reason why they want to get familiarity with the Long Beach State area in case they are eligible for the NCAA tournament. But I can't guarantee that because I don't know if their conferences have been approved of it. If the other conferences outside of like the Big West, the MPSF, the EIVA, the MIVA, and there was one other conference that I'm missing. King's Conference, the Conference of Carolinas. Sorry, I was blanking on that one. But other than those 5 conferences, I don't know if any other conferences have been approved. It's a very tricky process in terms of expanding the NCAA tournament. But I digress. Anyway, so after the matchup against Edward Waters, Long Beach State hosts Lewis of Romeoville on February 23rd. Then, after that little matchup, Long Beach State will host Penn State. We get to see Mark Pavlik, the former set point guest, take on Alan Knipe in the battle of former set point guests on March 1st. So I am definitely clearing my plans of that. That's going to be on a Friday, though, so I hope I have nothing planned on Friday that day. I don't think the NVA starts until April, but I digress. Then comes Big West Conference play as Long Beach State will host UC Santa Barbara March 8th. And then the day after, Long Beach State will head down to Santa Barbara. Then we have the two big matchups of Big West Conference play. Long Beach State is hosting Hawaii on March 15th and 16th. And oh baby, that's going to be a fun matchup. And I really can't wait to see Hawaii versus Long Beach State on both of those days. Those fall on a Friday and a Saturday, obviously. And I really can't wait to see Charlie Wade's crew. Then on March 29th and March 30th, Long Beach State plays UC San Diego. The 29th, Long Beach State will host. And then the 30th, Long Beach State will be on the road. It's another battle of two former set point guests, as it's going to be Brad Rostratter taking on Alan Knipe and his crew. Then on April 5th and April 6th, Long Beach State will play CSUN. They will host the Matadors. And then April 6th, they are on the road against the Matadors. And then to close out the regular season, Long Beach State plays UC Irvine, as the Beach will hit the road to Irvine to take on UC Irvine at the Brown Event Center. And then April 13th, a Saturday, Long Beach State will host UC Irvine. And then after that, they've got the Big West Conference Tournament, which will be held in Honolulu, Hawaii, which really makes me sad. I kind of wish it was going to be held at the Brown Event Center. No offense to Hawaii fans that are listening, but y'all have a good time in the Big West Conference Tournament. I'll just be here in California hoping to watch the tournament through either my phone or my laptop. And then the NCAA tournament, which is hosted by Long Beach State, will be on April 30th through May 4th. And I imagine Long Beach State will still have the talent that they have. You can get a good look of Long Beach State this weekend, as they will be hosting Grand Canyon and UC San Diego in the Gold Mine, which is the small gym of Long Beach State. Last weekend, they actually hosted USC and Pepperdine, which I didn't get a chance to go to because, unfortunately, I had retail work, but it's all good. But regardless, Long Beach State is hitting the ground running in terms of its fall season and its fall matches. Speaking of fall matches, it's actually a perfect segue to go into something that happened this past Friday and Saturday. UC San Diego got to host Hawaii in a pair of scrimmage matches, which, again, unfortunately I couldn't go to just because I had other plans. Friday, I had my other reporting job, even though the first match started at 4 p.m., and then UC San Diego against Hawaii in the second matchup on Saturday, that actually started at 8 p.m. It was kind of out of my travel plans, sadly, and I was just coming off of work, so it's either I go to UC Irvine, Cal Poly, or I have to find a way to get all the way up to La Jolla, but I digress. But for those that did see for those that did see Hawaii, UC San Diego, bully for you, and I'm happy you were able to. I wish I could have seen Hawaii in action, and it sucks that they, as well as Vanguard and Orange Coast College, weren't able to scrimmage against one another. I always look forward to that, but sadly, it just didn't happen this year. But I think Orange Coast College is heading down to Chicago in midway, I think following Veterans Day, for a little tournament. I'm not entirely sure, so don't quote me on it. But it's all good, and that's going to do it for some NCAA men's volleyball and men's college volleyball talk. So now let's go over Week 11 and preview some of these top matches to watch for. So we have to start on Tuesday, on Halloween, as we're going to get a treat with this matchup, a sneaky good treat, as we have UC Santa Barbara hitting the road to San Luis Obispo to play Cal Poly. All right, this is going to be a fun matchup. Cal Poly is coming off of 2 5-set wins, while Santa Barbara is coming off of a win over Cal State Fullerton, though that matchup, that was kind of their get-right game because they lost to UC Irvine in the previous matchup in 4 sets. My thing is this. Cal Poly has got to prove themselves, and I kind of made note of this in the interview with Annabelle Thalkin. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do so. Unfortunately, Cal Poly has not beaten one of the top teams in the Big West Conference. They haven't beaten Long Beach, Santa Barbara, or Hawaii. This is the Mustangs' chance to prove that they are amongst the top teams of the Big West Conference. If they're not going to win This week, they're for sure going to probably win. They may have a shot next week when they play Long Beach State at Mott Gymnasium in San Luis Obispo. But Cal Poly, they've got some momentum going. Don't be surprised if Cal Poly catches Santa Barbara on an off day. And former Set Point guest Daniel Gilman is going to be calling the game. So if you have ESPN Plus, good for you. Then on Wednesday, we have number 19 Purdue hitting the road to Madison to take on Wisconsin. All right, here's my thing. Wisconsin is probably going to beat Purdue, but I would not be surprised if Purdue wound up scrapping this matchup, at least doing somewhat good. I think Purdue has a chance because if you remember, they had a bad week last week with losing to Illinois, but now they have a chance to have a pretty good week. But I just don't see Purdue beating Wisconsin. Maybe they could at least take them to 4, but I just see the Badgers just getting right and making sure they do not slip up. Because other than Nebraska, Wisconsin hasn't really faced anybody in Big Ten conference play. So Purdue has that going for them. Also on Wednesday, we have number 8 Arkansas hitting the road to Athens to take on Georgia in a sneaky good matchup. Now, here's the thing. Georgia has a chance to pull off a big win, but Arkansas is playing some darn good volleyball. And one of the reasons why I think Arkansas can be so successful this year is because they have heart and they don't have the height on their team, but they have heart and hustle, and I think that goes a long way because Lincoln Arneal in his podcast kind of posted that Arkansas doesn't really have too many players that are above like 6 feet or something. But either way, I just see Arkansas winning this matchup. I would be shocked if for some reason Georgia pulled off this win. I mean, they do have a good chance, but I just see Arkansas winning this matchup. The only thing that I think Georgia has going for them is they're playing on the road. They don't have a big win as of right now, but this is the chance for them to pull off a big win. And Lincoln Arneal's volleyball podcast is called Volleyball State Podcast, which covers all things, which talks about mostly college volleyball, mostly in Nebraska, but I do recommend checking it out. Lincoln Arneal does an excellent job covering volleyball, as well as his partner, Jeff Sheldon. But for Arkansas, I see them winning this matchup, but don't be surprised if Georgia made some hairs raise in terms of Arkansas and its fan base. Then jumping over to Friday, we have number 1 Nebraska hitting the road to Rec Hall to take on Penn State. Again, Nebraska has owned Penn State the past years. It's been a while since the Huskers have lost to the Nittany Lions. And honestly, I don't see Penn State beating Nebraska. Maybe they'll challenge them. Maybe they'll take a set off them. The thing that Penn State has going for them is they're playing in Rec Hall. Nebraska is still a fairly young team. And more importantly, they still have the pressure of staying undefeated. Because one loss puts them in a tie with Wisconsin for first place in the Big Ten. But for Penn State, after them losing to Michigan State on the road, I have lots of questions for Katie Schumacher-Cawley and her team. I really think Nebraska's going to win this one. I want to say Penn State can challenge Nebraska. I don't think they're going to win, but they're going to challenge them, and they may make the Huskers sweat it out a little. Next up, we have a top 10 matchup. We have number 9 Washington State hitting the road to Stanford to take on the Cardinal in Maples Pavilion. Now, here's my thing for Washington State. They've lost 3 of their last 4, and they are in search of answers, while Stanford lost against Arizona State. The big difference is this. Stanford had a blip of a game, and they had their worst hitting percentage game of the season. Do I think that's going to happen again? Absolutely not. Kendall Kipp is way too good of a player to have only 6 kills in a match. I really think Kendall Kipp has her big bounce-back game, barring anything out of the ordinary in terms of injury or anything else. And then expect Katie Baird and Elia Rubin to step up as well. For Washington State, if they were to bounce back and beat Stanford, that would be awesome. However, even if they do win, I just don't see the Cougars winning the Pac-12 this year. I think their Pac-12 hopes have kind of come to a sharp halt and a screeching halt. And I still think they can make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, maybe to the Elite Eight, but now I kind of have to wonder, can they survive? Can they beat Wisconsin or Nebraska? That's my biggest concern for them. And they also have a loss to Louisville, and Louisville's playing some darn good volleyball right now, so Washington State kind of went from being the darling to being the semi-big question mark, because I really like Washington State, and I still recommend buying stock into them. But they really need a get-right win. And they also really need to beat Cal as well. If they're not beating Stanford, they got to beat Cal. Otherwise, if they have lost 4 in a row and 5 of their last 6, then there might be some problems in Pullman, and we have to kind of reevaluate Washington State. Another top 10 matchup as we head to Atlanta is number 3 Louisville hitting the road to take on number 10 Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech, here's the thing. Georgia Tech is 1 game behind Louisville. Louisville's playing some darn good volleyball. The only way I see Georgia Tech winning this is Tamara Oteen and Bianca Bertolino. They're going to have big games. If they have big games, Georgia Tech has a chance. And if they can catch Louisville on an off night, or if their block just is on one, and if they're digging everything left to right, I think Georgia Tech has a shot. But Louisville, like I said, they're playing some darn good volleyball. I think that loss to NC State just proved how better NC State was. How good NC State was on that day, and how unpredictable the ACC can be. And honestly, I think Louisville, they just have a well-balanced roster, and they just have so many options that I think Georgia Tech is going to be a little overwhelmed, even though they're at home. Then we have a sneaky good matchup staying in the ACC. We have number 6 Pitt at Florida State. Now, I want to say Florida State could have a chance in this one, but Florida State does not have the big dogs like Pitt does. Pitt is legit, and there's a reason why they've only lost 1 conference match. Florida State, on the other hand, I feel they're just not on the level of Pitt. The only thing that Florida State has is that they are at home, and they are flying under the radar, and with me talking down on them, maybe that is the Teran Rodriguez jinx. But I just see Pitt winning this matchup, even though it's a road matchup. Pitt does have a big weekend this weekend, as they've got Florida State and Miami on the road. So that could challenge Pitt a little. But honestly, I think Pitt should roll in this one. Staying in the Sunshine State, we have number 11 Tennessee at number 20 Florida. Now for Tennessee, if they want to have any sort of hope of finishing first in the SEC and continuing to host a regional game, or being a top 16 seed to make things simpler, they're going to have to run the table for the most part in the SEC. It does not help that they lost to Arkansas. It also doesn't help that they lost to Kentucky. But as long as they don't lose to anybody else, they should be fine. For Florida, their hopes of winning the SEC, I think, are pretty much done. For them, it's just all about still staying relevant and still staying afloat. They should make the NCAA tournament. The only way if they don't make the NCAA tournament is if they lose out. I just see Tennessee winning this matchup, even though it's going to be in Gainesville. And honestly, Tennessee is going to continue its strong season. If Florida had their entire team with Kira Hudson, Anna Dixon, as well as Alexis Stuckey, I think they could win this matchup fairly easily. But Tennessee is rolling. They are just as hot as Arkansas and Kentucky. I think they have a lot going for them, and they know what is on their plate if they want to finish atop the SEC. Then we have a sneaky good matchup right here in the Big 12. UCF at number 22 Houston. All right, it's tough for me to justify how good UCF can really be. Their Big 12 schedule wasn't really all that it was cracked up to be. Everyone thought, UCF is undefeated. They might be good. Well, they unfortunately played the bottom part of the Big 12. Now they're kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of their conference, having to play, and they've already dug into the likes of facing Baylor and TCU. Now the rest of the way, they've got ranked opponents. They've got Houston this week, and then I imagine they've got BYU sometime down the road, and then Texas, and then they've got Kansas as well. So all in all for UCF, if they want to make a strong case of making the NCAA tournament, which I think they could, but the resume just isn't glaring to me, I think they're going to have to pull off a upset against some of these ranked teams. And beating Houston, which, I mean, they're not bad, but they're all right, if you ask me. Like, Houston isn't really eye-popping as they were early in the season. But for me, I would think that Houston would need that get-right game. And this is kind of the perfect one, because if they lose, then they're probably out of the top 25, if not teetering toward being out of the top 25. By the way, those two teams play on Saturday as well. Then on Friday, we have another sneaky good matchup, Cal Poly at Hawaii. All right. So here's my thing for Cal Poly. They had to go 5 against Cal State Fullerton. They had to go 5 against UC Irvine, albeit in a smaller gymnasium, but I digress. How are they going to fare in Stan Sheriff Center? It's going to be so tough to win that matchup. They're going to need to have Tommy Stockham go Superwoman, and then they're going to need to have Annabelle Falcon and Lizzie Markovska just go beast mode, and maybe Kate Lang. No, Kate Lang is the player on UC, or is on Hawaii. But regardless, they're going to need to have everybody have a hand in this one. But for Hawaii, Amber Igidi is going to probably have a big game. Riley Wagner is probably going to have a big game. Kate Lang is probably going to continue to dish the offense. Like, Hawaii, I don't see losing this matchup, but don't be surprised if Cal Poly has to scrap their way to victory. Emmy Bullis is a fantastic setter, and I think she's going to go toe-to-toe with that Hawaii offense. And I think she's going to really hold her own. It's just going to all be dependent on if she can pull off the big plays, and if Cal Poly can win the big points, and they don't have a big letdown like they almost did against UC Irvine. Like, they were kind of fortunate to win that matchup, but unfortunately for Irvine, they kind of let that one slip through the fingers because they've had rotten luck in 5-set matches. But all in all, for Cal Poly Hawaii, I think it's a sneaky good matchup just because Cal Poly has a lot to prove this week. They have to. Their next 3 matches are gauntlet matches. They are home against Santa Barbara, like I mentioned. They are on the road against Hawaii, and then I think Friday or Saturday they're at home against Long Beach State. Winning one of those matches would be a big time match. It would be a big time win for either of those for Cal Poly. Winning either of those matches would be big. But all in all, for battling allergies. But all in all, for Cal Poly, I could see them winning this matchup, but again, they're gonna have to play perfect. So I put my money on Hawaii. Then on Saturday, we have another sneaky good matchup. We have Iowa State taking on TCU. Now, for Iowa State, unlike TCU, sadly, they were ranked in the top 25. However, TCU has been flying under the radar. I think TCU has a solid team. So, I think this is a Big 12 matchup to watch for. Don't be surprised if this one goes 5. And Kate Slack is the player on Cal Poly that I'm thinking of. She's the middle blocker for Cal Poly and not Kate Lang. Kate Lang is on Hawaii. I'm getting my Kates mixed up. But back to Iowa State versus TCU. I think this is going to be a very underrated matchup. And one of these teams, if not both of these teams, could be in the NCAA tournament. So don't be surprised if the winner of this improves their chances of making the NCAA tournament. Then on Saturday, we have a big West showdown for probably first place. UC Santa Barbara at Hawaii. Now, the Gauchos escaped Hawaii on their gym floor in 5 sets. Now they're going to have to play their best game against Hawaii in Stan Sheriff Center. If they could pull off this road win, that would be big time, but Hawaii is going to have a huge crowd. I would not be surprised if there were 10,000 fans in Stan Sheriff Center. I really think Hawaii has a good shot at winning. I think they're playing better than they were previously when they lost to Long Beach State and then when they lost to UC Santa Barbara. It's just all about Hawaii just putting everything together at the right moment against a very talented UC Santa Barbara team, because it's only a matter of time before Hawaii does have to play Long Beach State again, and that could have implications of seeding purposes in the Big West Conference tournament. Then on Sunday we have the Big East Bonanza, number 25 Marquette taking on number 17 Creighton. Here's my thing for Creighton. They're starting to get injured left and right, as we still don't know. I mean, they're still winning, but they're becoming more of a walking IR like Florida is. And just to quickly breeze through this, Marquette-Creighton is always a legendary matchup, whether in most sports, especially women's volleyball. So don't be surprised if this one goes 5. I was very surprised Marquette swept Creighton at Marquette. But now the ball is in Creighton's court. It's on their home floor, and they're going to have to really put 2 plus 2 together and really just dominate this matchup. Because if they don't, Marquette's probably going to be the top seed, and we're going to have to figure out what's going on with Creighton. Also, I could see Marquette probably rising further in the Big East Conference standings. Also on Sunday, we have number 16 Penn State at number 19 Purdue. Yes, this little rematch right here. Penn State, this is a big week for them. They've got Nebraska at home on Friday, and then they've got Purdue on the road on Sunday. That means Penn State has to come up big this week. If they don't, then I don't know if this team can really hold their own in the NCAA tournament. They lost to Purdue at Rec Hall the first go-around, so I really hope for Penn State's sake they don't get Purdue on their good week. Because remember, Purdue is an up-and-down team. And for me, I would really like to see Purdue be consistent in a week. Because Purdue also has a big week as well. They're playing Wisconsin on the road, mind you. So thankfully for Purdue and their sake, they get to host Penn State, which is definitely a winnable matchup. But it just can't be Jess Maruzic carrying the entire load. They need all their other players to step up as well. Because if it's just Jess Maruzic, then Purdue's going to eat that up, and then they're going to have Eva Hudson, Raven Colvin, and Chloe Chicoine just popping off. And also maybe Lourdes Morales, I think that's her name. She could have a big game as well. So don't be surprised if Purdue pulls out all the tricks in the book when it comes to getting everybody involved, just because Purdue is a solid team, but when they're having their inconsistencies, that's when I really have to wonder if this team can really go deep into the NCAA tournament. I really think that, and I said Lourdes Morales, it's Lourdes Myers. I'm sorry. So Lourdes Myers. She didn't have the best game against Illinois, but that's just one bad game. Maybe she got the bad game out of the way. Then also on Sunday, on ESPN, we have number 13 Kentucky at number 20 Florida. I remember when this matchup decided the SEC. Now it's going to be who stays in contention for the SEC crown and who stays afloat in the SEC, in pretty much the SEC race and in terms of being relevant in the SEC. For Kentucky, I really see them winning this matchup. I don't mean that with any disrespect to Florida, but Kentucky is healthy for the most part. With Regan Rutherford back and their offense is humming like an engine, I just see them going to Gainesville and getting the win. Again, no disrespect to Mary Wise and her team, but this is a Kentucky team that is on a roll. And then the last matchup to watch for, and this is a sneaky good matchup, number 15 Arizona State at USC. So here's my thing. USC has had their consistencies and inconsistencies. They're kind of like Purdue, which they actually have a win against. And they also beat Washington State, which is kind of the reason why Washington State is in a little bit of a downward spiral here. But can they beat Arizona State? The reason I have this as a top matchup is because these two went 5 the first time. If USC could really hold their own, and they could really bring it in this match, because they haven't really lost a whole lot at Galen Center this year. They could pull out the win, and I don't even think USC has lost at Galen Center, if I'm mistaken, as SC is a very good home team, if you ask me. But Arizona State pulling off that win over Stanford, that gives them a lot of confidence, and do not be surprised if Arizona State hands USC their first home loss of the season, as USC is undefeated at home this year, as of this recording. But that's going to do it for my top matchups to watch for in Week 11. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to drop the beat, because we have a show coming up in less than 3 minutes. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. I'm sorry if I kind of went nearly 2 hours, but I had to. I had to get all the nooks and crannies down. Hopefully, next week will be a lot shorter. I promise you. Shout out to the chat room, Larry B, Patty Bax, Davidson Crooks, who also popped into the chat room, Mikey Two Guns, and Mike Pat. I really do appreciate y'all tuning in. Set Point might be at a different time next week, as I might be on at 3 p.m. as opposed to my initial start time of 6 p.m. And I'm not sure if there will be any SoCal Supreme Sports Show this week, just because I'm going to be so busy. But it is all good. But for everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. If you're listening still on Spreaker, Where You At Sports Chat with Joey Pagart is on in a couple minutes. Have yourself a great rest of the evening. Enjoy the volleyball action this week. And I will see you on Saturday at Long Beach State and Cerritos College. Peace!